Hey everyone, welcome back to another exciting episode of Tackle Productions. Today I'm back off being joined once again by both Tanner and, like always, Fluff.
What's up?
What's going on, people?
And like always, there's buttons down below. Feel free to click them, they're there for a reason. Today's matchup, we're still sticking with the theme of new stuff because, set 14 is finally out. So Fluff is bringing Jiren, while Tanner is taking his hand at the new starter deck Vegeta leader with a twist. Guys, take it away.
Yeah. Tanner, I feel like my deck is pretty straightforward. I don't feel like I did anything particularly spicy with it. Why don't you talk about what you've got going on here?
Yeah, so realistically, this leader came out, and it's a red Saiyan, and for a long time I've been trying to make that 4-drop Alliance Gohan work. So I was like, okay, well, it's a red Saiyan, and that's a qualification for that card, so let's make some red-green jank and see if it works. What I was surprised about, or kind of what took me back, is this leader puts in so much work, just in general.
Yeah, the leader, that leader is insane because it makes your Unisons threatening. Like the presence of the Unison is like a double threat, but then also if you try to like mess with the Unison, your leader, it just completely de-incentivizes it, negates the first attack, plus 6,000 on the Unison. Like, it's just a lot to deal with. So your Unison is typically just going to sit and bubble unless like your opponent is running something that it just rips markers off by effect.
Absolutely. And of course it abuses the Unison that I would think a lot of people thought may or should have maybe been hit to take care of King Piccolo, which of course is that set 13 Piccolo, which is just gross.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that Kaba's not bad either.
No, the Kaba's actually pretty good. That Kaba excellently deals with other Unisons. So the Topo here, the Zeno, it's really good against the low body count. And it's a great way to take Demigraws out too.
Can the Vegeta
what is
only
it?
give Kaba double strike? Or is it any Unison?
No, the Kaba has a +1, right?
Yes.
It's a +1 that
minus 10k. Yeah, just minus 10k Unison, or I think another card. And I didn't know this, which I'm sure most of our viewers do, but I didn't realize that when you reduce the Unison to 0, it removes a marker, which can be very clutch.
Yeah, and actually, so there's an interesting interaction there as well. If that minus would, so if it's in battle, that would actually end the battle as well, and the marker won't go down until because once the attacking or guard card goes to 0, you proceed to the following checkpoint, and then that's when the markers are reset.
Yeah,
interesting.
Yep, it's a really weird interaction, but yeah, that Kaba is like a Unison sniper, especially for the smaller Unisons.
Yeah, which I think is hyper relevant right now. I mean, Jimmy made the point, I think, sitting at the shop, and I believed you guys kind of agreed, is that a lot of leaders are abusing Spirit Boost right now. So that is just a great Unison to use with it. But I would still consider it the secondary Unison in the deck, just because of that Piccolo being so abusive with the kill a 15k body and so many swarm decks sitting around.
Well, yeah, and it's an extra draw per turn for you. I mean, there's nothing bad. If you happen to drop like a 25,000, you're going to clear out most cards on your opponent's side of the field, which, against the Jiren deck, that will pretty much hit anything. Outside of the big 8 drops.
Yeah. Speaking of Jiren, I was very probably confused playing against it because I wasn't quite sure where to try to like find the chink in its armor. You got to do so much, and it seemed like it was a lot of like EX Evolve and things like that. And from my past, battles with other EX Evolve decks, it's typically break the chain, and that seems to break the deck, but you didn't seem to have any issue with that if I remove pieces. Seems like Jiren recurred pretty well.
Yeah, it's this big popular thing that red decks are doing where they spam the field for cheap or no energy cost. So the leader and Unison both play a 1-drop, which is just advantage, The 4-drop is a free EX Evolve, so it doesn't cost me energy to do that. And then the 5 DX Evolve is only 1 energy, and the 5 has built-in protection. So if you blow up the 1-drop or the 4-drop, which also both replace themselves when played, by the way, because they search, top, or draw, so they replace. It's not a negative in hand advantage to play either card. So if you blow up the chain, I didn't really lose anything for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then once I have the 5 just has the protection to move 2 cards under it to the drop area or take a life, and then the 5 or 4 can go into the 8-drop once I have 3 energy. I just have to wait until I get 3 energy.
Is that the same effect as the 4-drop Majin Buu? Like, where if it's just by a skill, or can an opponent still steal it and stuff like that?
If it's removed by a skill. So if they swing over it, it can't to protect. If it gets negged out, it can't protect. It's just by skill. So if they try to steal it, you can activate the effect and keep it because it is being removed. But yeah, negging and swinging over it is a good way to get rid of them.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, because this deck looked like it put in a lot of work. I know, from what I recall, you said you enjoyed playing it this weekend.
Yeah.
There's the Unison, and this is what's so interesting about it. You play the Unison, and that triggers the awaken condition on this leader. Untap 2, go down to 5. And honestly, I found a lot of advantage in this play because you just get the draw off of the Unison. If you're not at 5 life, you're taking those lives, and you get the untap 2, so you basically get to play the Unison for free.
Yep.
It's really gross.
Yeah, which is really good. And I think, does the leader give the Unison double strike when it swings?
Correct, yes. So on leader swing, it's an auto. And Matt was keen to point it out. You need to declare it as a Kai wording. So it says choose up to one of your red Unisons with a specified cost of 2 and no keyword skills, and give it double strike. And to currently talk about this, the Piccolo does not have any keyword skills until you activate its -2 or 3. I always forget if it's -2 or 3. But at that point in time, it does get rejuvenate, so you do have to be careful on when you activate that ability, and watch your sequencing. I would assume that's how it works.
Yep. That would be right.
And now the age-old, what does red-green do when you don't really have a lot to do? And that's the one issue with multicolor. And we talked about when we laid this deck out after our game, there's some really interesting things we could do to change the deck, and I think to thin it out, make it a little bit more effective. Of course, abuse, assimilate, and eradicator of peace. Got those on order because I feel like that's the perfect 2-drop play right now, almost.
Yeah, Eradicator of Peace is such a good card. It is highly respondable by a lot of things that your opponent can do. But if your opponent doesn't respond, it's super punishing. And if they do respond, then you just got rid of one of your opponent's responses for only sacrificing 2 energy. Eradicator would probably be a really bad card if you had to tap 3 or 4 energy for him.
Yeah, I feel like he's an improved Corn and Liqueur.
100%.
It still gives you 2 draws, though, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And you really turned me on to that negate you just played. I did not realize how good that was.
Which one was it?
The Saiyaman or Cyberman.
The testing the opposition. Yeah, those are fantastic. I actually misread those cards for the longest time and thought you could only play it when you were at 3 or less life. And I was like, these are garbage because they put you in double strike range if you have to play them for free. And as is usually the case when I miss a major detail about a card, Bancroft was like, duh, it's 5 or less. Like, that's why they're good. And it completely changed. Like, they are really good. Because it gives you, it's essentially a 2 negates, and it can let you awaken. One of the problems with the Jiren deck specifically is because your Jirens are lightning bolts for attacks, and your Unison might be a lightning bolt for attacks. Sometimes you won't awaken until like turn 4.
Oof. Yeah, that wouldn't be very fun. I will say though, I maybe now is not the time to talk about it, but I know you were actually somewhat pleased with how Bandai did this archetype, given that the promos are not integral to the deck, that you felt like it could perform pretty well out of box if you had just the cards from the set.
Yeah, it's a nice, refreshing change. Since Rise of the Unison Warrior, set 10, and probably even a lot before, but it seemed like every archetype had an integral piece of their archetype that was gated behind promo cards, which is fine. We play the game because we like the game, but trying to get a 1 out of 12 to 16 cards that is selling for $75 to $60 on a market basically doubles or triples the cost of playing a deck. Whereas, I do think that the promos could be useful in builds of the deck, but you can 100% play this leader without the promos. And I think that's a fantastic move. And I really like that Bandai is printing, just fun cards as promos or cards that supplement older archetypes. I mean, if you look at Yu-Gi-Oh, their big tournament packs are just reprints. They're not exclusive cards.
Mm-hmm. And before we get too far away, I want to go over real quick. In the audio, Tanner did state Yamcha timing window 2. It looked like he played during timing window 1, but that's the reason why he KO'd one of the cards coming into play. It was during the second timing window. Just didn't want too much time to go from that.
Oh yeah, and we do have eagle-eyed viewers, so they would notice something like that. I was hit and miss on Merciless Barrage, and I took it out before I played a practice game, then I put it back in, and I did not think about it like this, but it is a great alliance target. So I felt like, I was thinking about maybe making the cut on that, but even if I just get 1 or 2 cards off of that, getting a body on board to tap for alliance is not bad.
It's not.
It's not great, but not bad.
Anything you can play for free will benefit you in the end with a red-green deck with cards with alliance.
Yeah, I played Yamcha when I was running King Piccolo. I think I ran it at a 2 of, and I revisited the idea of Yamcha for this deck, and really, I didn't give Yamcha enough credit for how useful that card can be. It really is a useful card. If you understand the windows that it's applicable in and where it can hit, you can do just about anything with that card.
So, were you just trying to stop him from going to the big Jiren boy?
Yeah, and to be honest, Violent Rays was the only negate I had in hand. I didn't think it would be that easy to use. So my thought process here was I didn't really have anything to go into as far as alliance targets. Fluff's a good enough player that leaving 2 energy open isn't going to bluff him out of anything, but that can be a scary thing to see a green-red deck sit on 2 open energy. But I was hoping to kind of let him get through for a couple, and then he'd evolve, and then I'd play Violent Rays. But that deck pressured me so well that I was like, okay, I need to just play this now and pray I get something worthwhile. And I don't. The deck, and I think it's because I'm running it at 54, and I just threw it together at the end, lacked a little bit of consistency. But to go back to what we talked about, and I would like to maybe profile it next weekend after the adjustments, but I do think that adding the assimilates, cutting down on some cards, could really make it much more consistent, and it won't quote unquote brick as bad.
Red-green decks that are super consistent are very good at rocketing your opponent through their life in the first 2 to 3 turns.
Mm-hmm.
And if you just play those games right, it puts your opponent on a timer where if they play wrong and don't appropriately respond to what you're doing, you can just steal the game.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I think red-green decks are really good about. They're really good at that, and then they're really good at sitting back, letting your opponent make the decisions, and then punishing your opponent for those decisions.
And I feel like it can also be hyper defensive. And it's got a lot of flexibility as well, where if you leave open energy on your opponent's turn, you can punish them in that battle step. And for so long, we lived in a meta where the battle step was so crucial, and I feel like that's still a little bit of the case. I found myself in some instances not even doing anything during the battle step to not open up the combo window. But kind of what I wanted to get at is like, you do have Topo, you do have Violent Rays, is that all you got? As Matt calls it, King Vegeta and Friends, or Imposing Presence. There's a lot of defense there that if you don't think you can go in, you can give yourself the flexibility on your opponent's turn, and as you just said, like, make them make choices.
That was my approach to this Jiren deck. Was I really wanted a deck that would punish my opponent in the way that Invoker punished. As you played the game, as you played your natural game, the Invoker deck punishes you as a player and gives resources to the Invoker player. And that's what I wanted the Jiren deck to feel like. I wanted it to feel very much like an Invoker style deck, where I'm mostly reacting to what you're doing as opposed to swarming the field. I don't like that everyone is searching for this aggro field to red, where you're trying to win on turn 2 or kill as soon as turn 3 starts up. I don't think that's a very fun version of this game. And yes, we're talking about competitive, and I understand an aspect of competitive is how hard do you have to work to get your opponent to not be able to play the game with you. And that is really the way that the competitive scene operates. But I really like red as a control color more than an aggro color.
And I think it's got the flexibility to do both, which what makes it so dangerous. That if you wanted to almost, that's what I think makes it so scary at an event is you sit down across from a red leader, and by that first game, you either find yourself going, okay, I prepared for the aggro, I'm good, or you go, oh wow, that went long. And that, I think that's where the sideboards are going to be extremely important for red, and that like Gen Con coming up or things like that. But it's a very flexible color.
Very flexible. It has a lot of potential. Here, I know I've got you near kill range.
Oh, easily.
You're at 2 life, so it's just a matter of kind of pushing you into taking that 2 life. And as you'll see here, I do end up playing one of these cards wrong. I don't think it ultimately changed anything, because I have another card in hand that I'm able to play in its place.
I'm gonna shoot you. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah, I was gonna shoot you straight. I had nothing, so you could have played that wrong and then played something else and then played something else right, and you would have beaten me. I'm not trying to make an excuse for the poor performance of the game, but I had nothing in hand, so it did not affect the game.
So the state of your field was basically the way that I kept every field I played against this night. Game 1, every time he played a battle card, I immediately dealt with it. Every time you play battle card, I immediately dealt with it. And that's just what this deck does.
Did I even play a battle card?
Yamcha, King Piccolo, but
Yamcha, King Piccolo,
they were taken care of right away.
Yeah.
And now you can see, like, this is the multicolor evil. I had 2 Unisons, 2 10Ks, and I do want to say, though, I do think that Surprise Attack Vegeta is very good. I think it's a very, very good card.
I think there's a fire version of that deck. The leader puts in a ton of work, and it makes a unassumingly undangerous Unison a threatening aspect of a deck. And then it makes your opponent burn more than they have to just get over it, right?
Well, absolutely.
Like there was no way that I was going to waste resources going into that King Piccolo. Like, I had just said in my head, if you ever at any point drop a big battle card and -2, I just have to try to recover from there on out.
And to be honest, I mean, I don't. This is a bit of a hot take, so I might get crucified for it, especially as time goes on. But I think this leader is a problem already because it's going to severely limit design space for 2-drop unisons. For red 2-drop unisons, I really think this leader is this version's Vegex. I really, really do. Tell me I'm wrong in the comments if you'd like, because I love being wrong. But I think it's an abusive leader.
I think there's a lot of room to abuse. The one thing is, if you look at the current existing pool of red unisons that are specified 2, there's not a lot of them. I think there's only 3 or 4. And as far as their usefulness is concerned, there's really only 2 of them that are useful.
Yeah.
And that would be the Kaba and then the Piccolo that you're playing. I don't think the other 2 are particularly that good or have major impacts in the game. So right now, it's not too bad. I will say with that Piccolo, it's a little nutty. But definitely moving forward, they're going to have to be careful about specified 2-cost unisons.
Yeah. And it's that red Saiyan leader. You know, there's so many cards that specify that mono red Saiyan or require that red Saiyan leader. And for so long, you were stuck with that baby promo box from Draft Box 3 or whatever it was, or before draft boxes were draft boxes.
This would be the perfect leader to try to bring triple flash back in.
That's what I was thinking in the back of my head is maybe that, but I think we're at time, so Bancroft, cut us off and send us home.
With that being said, thank you all for tuning in. Hope you all enjoy. Keep in mind, there's buttons down below and on the screen while Fluff does it. The outro.
I did say that I made a misplay at the end of this turn, but I don't think I did. I think I'm thinking of another game that I had.
That was our Gogeta Xeno match.
That was the Gogeta Xeno. Okay. Yeah. So don't listen to that. Pick on one of the 4 floating videos here. Read your cards, know your plays. Let us make the mistakes so that you don't have to. We don't mind looking stupid, but you guys don't want to do that. And as always, Fluff out.